Good afternoon. It is, of course, a Sunday. Let's talk about the state of things. But before we do, of course, I'd like to thank all my patrons. Baron of Dice for supporting the channel. Get 5% off your order with code MDG. And Wiberian for providing art and everything for the channel. Big fan. So, the state of our greenskins, Cruel Boys, Ironjaws, and Gloomspite armies since the last patch, or since the last update, has been interesting. So let's talk about these three armies one at a time, and let's talk about how they're doing and where and what direction I see them heading moving into the future. And you'll have to let me know where you agree and where you disagree with me in the comments below. Remember, I started this channel in an attempt to learn more about how to play and how to win with Cruel Boys, and that underlying rationale is still there. Please tell me what you think. So let's start with the army that I think is having the worst time of these three, which is, of course, Ironjaws. So if you remember, in the last update, they reduced some points for us, which was okay and nice. You know, Kragnos went down, not that, you know, we shouldn't have to rely on Kragnos, but unfortunately we do. We also had Ragers go down in price, and most importantly is that we had a rules change to the Ironjaws army that says that we get that WA once per hero per game, not once per game period. So it means now, if we're 3 drops, that we can have 3 rounds, probably rounds 2, 3, and 4, where we get +1 attack for friendly units wholly within 18 of those chosen heroes. So, not that hard to do, given that a lot of our heroes that we're running right now are either Kragnos or infantry units. It's relatively easy to keep them safe behind enemy lines. But unfortunately, I haven't really seen an uptick in anything. I haven't really seen like anybody doing well with Ironjaws. I'm sure there are people out there doing well with Ironjaws, but I haven't seen any evidence that would suggest that Ironjaws are in any of a better place than they were before this last patch. So if I look at an army that's either, you know, really overperforming or really underperforming in the meta, I like to ask myself a rather simple question, which is this an issue that points can be, or where the solution can just be altering points, or is this a problem with the actual written rules, like the war scrolls and the rules of the army? And unfortunately for Ironjaws, I have a feeling that they lack the actual rules. That the fact that like the Ironjaws WA rule is a fine rule, no problem there, and the Mighty Destroyers rule that we have in Ironjaws is also a fine rule. But unfortunately, I just don't think that those rules, combined with the war scrolls that we have, bring enough power to the army for it to actually be able to overcome the obstacles that we're facing right now. Like, I don't know what Ironjaws is supposed to do if you're playing into Rattling Guns, into Skaven Shooting. I don't really know what you're supposed to do. We don't have the kind of mobility and tricks where we can get to them like we used to in 3rd edition, you know, with the way that Mighty Destroyers used to work. Right? Even our teleports have been reduced, and it's like I don't see how we're supposed to get into a unit that has like decent firepower and can move. To me, it's like, well, that we're done. If you have good shooting, then the Ironjaws army just kind of crumbles. I also don't know what we're supposed to do against armies that have particularly dominant magic. Because obviously, and, you know, don't get me wrong, I understand that armies have their strengths and their weaknesses, and that, you know, big casters is not a thing that a melee army is supposed to be good at, but bear with me till I get to the end of my point here. You know, if you have good shooting, we can't do anything against you. If you have really good magic, then we really struggle, and we in this manifestation meta, obviously Ironjaws are not an army that is positioned. If you're a really fast army, like if you have fast cavalry, or if you just are fast, like if you have, you know, if your infantry move 8 and have flying, Night Haunt, I'm not sure if it's 8, but I know that they're faster than lots of cavalry and have flying. You know, it's like, I'm not sure how we're supposed to deal with you. Like, we're slow, and even our faster, like our big fast units aren't that cost effective. You know, our Gore Gruntas aren't really doing any work. The big pigs are okay, but I don't think that like an army that is primarily big pigs, or like a big pig focused army, is very strong at all. So yeah, can't do much against fast armies. And then even against other melee armies that hit hard, like Khorne, let's say, we just don't match up. even if you look at the damage output that you can get from, like, let's say Night Haunt's frontliners, we lose in melee. I think we also lose in melee to Cruel Boys, which is a tricky army, right? Like, what is it that Ironjawz does better than the vast majority of other armies? It's supposed to be punch them in the face. It's supposed to be punch them in the face. And I can understand the direction that they were going with Ironjawz, where it's like, well, you hit on 4s, but you wound on 3s, and you're going to throw a lot of dice. You're going to throw a lot of dice. You're going to have, you know, let's say Brutes, with the Mega Boss giving you 2 additional attacks, and the Wah giving you an additional attack, and Ironjawz Brawl Battle Formation giving you another attack. But it's just not consistent enough. It's, you know, the Mega Boss isn't very good. So after the dust has settled on Ironjawz, I think that they're just sort of in a bad spot. I'm playing them right now in a league. I haven't actually got a league game in. My first 2 games didn't actually get played, unfortunately. So, but I'm bringing Kragnos and a bunch of Ragers. I've tested it out a little bit, and overall, every time I put Ironjawz on the table, I always feel like, oh, your army does what? Oh, that's cool. Mine does like a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and that's all. So unfortunately, I really think that for Ironjawz, it is indeed a War Scroll / army rules problem. So point reductions will help, but at some point we might, like, my prediction is that we'll see 60 Ardboys in lists when the points drop enough. When the points drop enough and you can fit in 3-foot heroes and 60 Ardboys, that might be a list. You know, because they're the most cost efficient unit. So when their points go down, we'll just spam them. It's not a good spot to be in. Kinda sucks. So, I don't know. We need a new book, I think, before Ironjawz are interesting. They're not even that fun. You know, like, people do like them, and I don't mean to yuck your yum if you love Ironjawz and love playing them. But I find that when I put them on the table, there's just not a lot going on. It's like, okay, walk up the battlefield, cool. Yep, move some extra things, yep. And then maybe 3 to 6 charge with Kragnos. Like, throwing Ragers with Kragnos at your enemy is the funnest thing that I can find to do with Ironjawz right now. And that's kind of the only thing. You know, if I put a bunch of big pigs on the table, I find they all just kind of die. Like, I don't know, it just doesn't feel great. It doesn't feel great. But if we're talking about Gloomspite Gitz, so Gloomspite Gitz is in a different position for sure. Rockets were dominating their army rosters. I have a feeling that they still are. Unfortunately, I mean, Rockets are maybe the best infantry in the game, if especially like infantry anvils. You know, like in blocks of 6, they are so hard to kill, and with the regeneration and the wards and the recursion out of the Loon Shrine, like just with everything, like they are very, very hard to actually get rid of and actually deal with. So they have a little bit of a War Scroll problem. I have a feeling that, you know, 6 months from now, that you won't see Rockets being played a lot, or if you do, you'll see them in small groups just because the points are going to continue to go up and be trouble. But beyond that, I think, like, besides that one glaring problem that Gloomspite Gitz has, which is overpowered Rockets, I think the rest of the book is in a really good position. I think that Squig Herd are fun and interesting. I think that, like, Bounders and the Bounder Boss is interesting. Gobblepalooza and Fungoid Cave Shaman Scragrod, I think that they're all in a really good spot. I think that you'll start to see more and more Squig lists come out as time moves forward and people move away from Rockets. But I still do think that Rockets will have a place and that you'll see them, but you won't be seeing 18 in a list. I think that it'll start to cap out at 12, and then be like 12 and then like some cheaper trash. Like I could see a list with 12 Rockets and Herd being sort of tossed everywhere. I think that could be kind of interesting and fun. So, yeah, I think that Gloomspite Gitz is actually in a really solid spot. I'm glad, like in my October list review, I didn't see a bunch of Rockets dominating the meta everywhere, so that's nice. I don't want, you can't be too strong and you can't be too weak with your War Scrolls and your army. You know, you don't want to be in Night Haunt's position, and you don't want to be in like Ironjaw's position. I don't know what they're going to do with Ironjaw's. I think that every single War Scroll could get another Rend, to be honest, and that would be okay. It's like, yeah, they're a rend army, right? Like they rend a lot. So I don't know. But yeah, Gits is sweet. I'm a big fan. I'm looking forward to what the lists look like moving forward.
Who are you talking to?
Everybody. So I'm looking forward to Gloomspike Gits and playing Gloomspike Gits moving forward. I think it's going to be good. And then last but not least, of course, we have my boys, the Cruel Boys. So when Cruel Boys first came out, there was lots of talk and lots of hype about how good the rules were. And I am also a big fan of the rules overall. I think that Cruel Boys right now is sitting somewhere between like a 3-2 army and a 4-1 army. And that's a pretty good place to be in. Monster Killers need to go up in points, but that's alright. And Gobsprak needs to come down in points. But I think that the army overall is fun. It's fun. It's a high skill ceiling army, which I enjoy. And there's lots of decisions to make and things to bounce around and teleport. And saving your dirty tricks and using them. And we're also very much like a Swiss Army knife type army, in that we have all these different tools and we use them to counter what our opponents are doing, either effectively or not. And I think it's a great spot to be in. The only thing that I really want to see for Cruel Boys moving forward is a new I want us to have a cavalry unit. We really need a cavalry unit, and I also think that Hobgrots need to come down in price, like by a lot. I think that, to be honest with you, that Hobgrots, as they are right now, should be like maybe like at maximum 80 points, but to be honest, probably cheaper. I think that spamming a bunch of Hobgrots to clutter up the battlefield and teleport them around would be a really fun way to play. And if the points go down, you might even see Swamp Boss Scumdrek make a visit, because he's pretty sweet, right? But Cruel Boys, you know, we're not a shooting army anymore, which is kind of nice. We definitely are an anti-monster army, which is cool. Like we have good heroes, you know, like the Vulture Boss, the Sludge Raker. Gobsprak is a good war scroll. He's just overcosted in points, so a reduction there would be very helpful, and it'd be another anti-monster tool that we can throw out there. But we don't really have a lot of good anti-infantry stuff. Like, obviously our Gut Rip is our Immortal Wound blender, but the reason that we're going to be a 3-2 4-1 army is because it's all about dice rolls. When we get all of our buffs and we roll into our opponent and roll average, we slay. But when we fail to get our buffs and roll average, it's not as exciting. So, but that's okay. You know, like every army has kind of the thing that they're good at, the thing that they're weak at. And if that's our thing, that's okay. Like we can be that army, you know, as long as the rules are fun and people are having fun and you're winning games and having a good time. I think that we're doing okay. So overall, I think that of those three Greenskins armies, I think that Cruel Boys are the ones that need the least amount of change. Ironjaws are the ones, like, they need a full rework. Straight up. Like, Mighty Destroyers, they need a whole other rule that's actually good. They need a smash-in and bash-in rule. It's like, when you get in combat with them, smash-in and bash-in, in 3rd edition was quite good. But in this meta that we have right now, I don't even think smash-in and bash-in would be good enough. Like, I think you could throw the old smash-in and bash-in rule at Ironjaws, and I don't think it would really make a significant difference. We're not really wiping units off the battlefield like we were in 3rd edition. In 3rd edition, if I had like two reinforced Gore Gruntas groups that ran into things, like, well, I'm fighting with both of them first, like, pretty consistently, you know? But that's not really the case in this meta, in this edition, in this season right now. So, yeah, I mean, the old Mighty Destroyers rule would be sick, and with the new Mighty Destroyers rule stacked in on top of it, that would be broken, but fun and good. But they need more on the movement side. So anyway, let me know what you think. Join the Discord, like, subscribe. Wow.